Today, I'm going to show you how I made this auto clicker to use on my Nintendo Switch. Let's start with the parts list. To control everything, I'm going to use an Arduino Nano. To actually do the clicking, I'm going to use a 9-gram micro servo with all of its included hardware. And specifically, we're going to use this control horn to do the button clicking. We're also going to use a 3D printed case and a couple of screws to hold it together. And optionally, we can use a battery and a slide switch. So I've got a cradle and a switch here. If you don't want it to be battery powered, you can just use the USB cable to power it, and I'll upload a case and wiring diagram for that as well. To start with, we have to get all these pesky pins off of our Arduino Nano. To do that, I am just clipping the plastic supports between each pin. That makes it really easy to come back with a pair of pliers and soldering iron to remove each pin one at a time. Now that we've got them all cut apart, we can just take them all out. Next up to prepare is the servo. So these things come with long connectors, which is really handy if you're building RC planes and stuff. But for us, I don't actually want this connector, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut it off and then peel and strip these wires. Don't need a whole lot, just enough to go through the holes on the Arduino. So with those wires all stripped, we are all set with the servo. Up next, if you decide to use the battery, we'll also need a short section of wire to go from the other side of the switch to the Arduino. And I'm just going to use a piece of the wire that I cut off of the servo. So here's that all soldered together. I just have the switch soldered between the positive lead of the battery and the Arduino. I did decide to put a little bit of heat shrink tubing on the switch just to make sure there were no shorts. So let's go ahead and just make sure that I've done everything correctly so far. So I'm just going to hold the battery in place and then flip the switch, and we should see a light turn on the Arduino, and we do. So we're all set to keep going. So with that ready, now we can put the servo into the case and then solder all of that together. So we do have to have the case ready before we can solder everything together, because otherwise we won't be able to get everything into the case because the servos mount from the front. So I just used the hardware that the servo came with to screw it in place, and then soldered the wires to the Arduino. Next up, we've just got to put that switch in place. And to do that, I'm just going to use a little bit of super glue. While the super glue sets, I'm going to sneak in some info about the code. It's basically just a glorified example sketch for the servo. We just changed the rotation because it doesn't need to take so long, and then it doesn't need to be as aggressive. So in the example sketch, it was 90. I just changed it to 15 degrees, and that works great. There we go. And now once that's set, we're basically done. We just have to stick the battery in it and give it a test fire. So with everything jammed in there, let's go ahead and put the cover off. Okay, so let's print a new case, new cover. There we go. Just comes up a little higher, and put that on, and swap out those short screws I showed earlier for a little bit of longer ones, and then we should be all set. And there we go. Now we just got to give it a test. Servo works, so we should be all set. A huge warning here is that this case is designed to fit on the genuine Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons, not any of these aftermarket ones. There are a few final adjustments to make on the servo. You'll see here where I put it, it's not actually pressing the button. So to fix that, I'm just unscrewing the control horn from the shaft of the servo, pull it off, move it over one notch, and then screw it back on. There we go. Let's stick the Joy-Con back in. There we go. Now it's pressing the button. We should be all set to test it on the actual Switch. I mainly plan to use mine on Animal Crossing, so I'm just going to demonstrate how it can be used to mass craft some fish bait. So you just get everything queued up, and then let it run. I'm sure there are other places you can use this as well. This is just where I plan to use mine. Thanks for stopping by.